Hi, welcome to a Resource Stage Conversation for January 2026. My name is Carl, and these Resource Stage Conversations are something that we started back during COVID, and they are one of my favorite things to do with Resource Stage, because I always think it's a great opportunity to chat with people and learn more about the people in our industry, because so often we might maybe talk about the playwright or talk about the director or the artists on stage, but the people behind the scenes, nobody knows who they are, and they do so many fantastic things to make shows happen. Today, we are at Canadian Stage in Toronto, and we are talking to Daniel Bennett. And Daniel is the Director of Production,
correct, yeah.
and Facilities here. And I've known Daniel for a few years now, and we are going to have a Resource Stage conversation. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Carl. Appreciate you invited me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for hosting us here today. We are in one of the rehearsal halls. This is one of the rehearsal halls here?
Yep, exactly. We use our upstairs theater as kind of a second rehearsal hall sometimes. Yeah.
Right, perfect. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're in one of the rehearsal halls here at the theater, and we finally had an opportunity to sit down and chat. So thanks for joining us. So Daniel, we're just going to jump right in. Why on earth did you get into this crazy industry?
Great question, Carl. I mean, I've always been a creative person growing up. So I was a figure skater, specifically an ice dancer. I also played piano. And so it was in high school when I was, looking for an outlet. I'd quit figure skating and was like, what am I going to do with that? My high school English teacher who ran the drama club was like, I think you should join the drama club. I think you'd like this. And that was just based on a little skit we'd done in English class. And so I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And then so I joined the high school drama club and got hooked and did every single production from there as an actor.
Nice.
And then of course, I was like, this is really great, but I'm going to go to university for neuroscience and psychology because I'm going to be a doctor.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's cool. Cool.
And so I went to U of T, and then of course, was studying really hard. But then in my third year, I was president of the Trinity College Dramatic Society and was directing the spring musical, and said, okay, I'm spending 15 hours a day directing this production of Rent, and no time studying neuroscience and psychology. Clearly there's something I want to do here more than the other.
Right.
So finished off that degree and then was like, maybe I should go get a formal education in this.
Right.
And that's when I applied to the National Theatre School and started my career in theatre production.
That's very cool. So that everybody knows, National Theatre School is in Montreal, not here in Toronto. So you needed to pick up and head to Quebec to this wasn't I'm just going to shift things and walk across campus and do something different. This was you're making a life change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Cool. And so I'm jumping ahead, but how do you feel like your neurology background actually fits into your job today?
Well, as director of production, I do a lot of managing people.
Of course.
And I think something I love about this role is you're kind of in the middle of three sections of the industry, right? You have the technicians who are building the sets. It's really practical, very technical. You have the artists who are, dreaming big and like, I have this idea for 26-foot tall icicles to fly in. How do we make that happen?
Right.
But then also the executive leadership who are, running a business at the end of the day. And so being in the middle of those three different subsects of people requires different styles of management. And I actually think my psychology degree helps with that.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, they're very different types of people who are in those different types of roles. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too, even just stepping back from how do they relate? Because there's actually a few people who I know have taken the neuroscience or cognitive science approach into theater, is that, that discipline is all about understanding the human condition, why we are the way we are. That's just what we're doing in theater, just from a different lens. And so I think that's kind of the natural bridge between neuroscience and psychology and life in the theater.
Right, cool. So you said that you were doing some directing through school. You ended up on the technical side of things.
Yes.
Instead of on the more artistic side of things. I mean, not to say that you don't have an artistic influence in what happens in shows, But why did you decide down that path? Why did you end up that way?
Well, I did actually apply to the directing program at the National Theatre School and didn't get in.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. And so I applied to production as well because I was like, I'd done a little bit of stage managing.
Right.
And so I was like, I could maybe see a life in that as well, but didn't really know anything about any of the other components that went into technical theater. Right. And so didn't get into the directing program, got into the production program. I was like, okay, great. At least that'll be a foot in the door, and we'll figure out how to, maybe circle back to directing from there.
Right.
And lo and behold, I fall in love with the production side of things. Right. And really, when I think about it, it makes sense. Like, I've always been a super organized and kind of logical, practical person. So, being in this management role really felt very comfortable. I think the other thing I loved is, of course, I went into the production design and technical arts program, which is lighting design, sound design, and video design, as well as production management, technical direction, and stage management. Not knowing where I would land. And the whole time I said, I'm not a very technical person. And so, I definitely do not want to be a technical director.
Right.
And then in my third year, I was like, okay, I just got to do the thing that scares me. And so I went to Andrew Lundy, the director of the program, and said, give me a technical direction my third year. I never want to do that, but I just want to experience it. And then, of course, while I was in it, I was like, wow, I absolutely love this.
Yeah.
One, because you get to manage people, which I love.
Right.
And two, you have your fingers in all the little pots, right? No matter what the discipline is, you're kind of managing, you have an impact on that.
Yeah.
And then from there, I ended up jumping into technical direction.
Nice. Okay. So you were at the school. Mm-hmm. You did what you said. You went ahead and tried something new. You loved it a lot. And then where did you go from there?
Yeah. So while I was at the school, I've been doing some work over the summers in either the Summer Works Performance Festival here in Toronto or the Toronto Fringe. As well, I had the opportunity to do some work at Buddies, which was amazing over my time at NTS. And so that's kind of where I got a lot of my foundational roots from. Mm-hmm. And then I applied to an apprenticeship at the Grand Theatre in London, Ontario for technical direction. And so I applied, got in, and did that for a year, which was amazing. And then at the end of that, they were like, we have some projects going on, and the current TD is going to manage some of those projects. Do you want to be the technical director? And I said, sure, why not? I can do that. And then I stayed at the Grand for 4 more years after that.
Right. And that's, of course, where we met.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. And I get the impression you did a pretty good job while you were there. I thought so.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started today about how the Grand is kind of a unique place. Mm-hmm. And I think the apprenticeship program that they've had there for such a long time is pretty unique. Mm-hmm. Is there anything to say about that? Like, is there anything that you can say about how that shaped your career and where you ended up?
Absolutely.
Where you ended up today. You're not done yet.
Not done. Hopefully not.
No,
hopefully many more years ahead.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because I think that the apprenticeships is something that's actually missing in the Canadian theatre ecology right now. And that is something that we really, I feel, larger organizations need to invest in order to help bridge the gap between theatre education and professional comportment and a professional practice. Right. And so that apprenticeship was invaluable to me, to be able to learn from Paul Fujimoto-Peel, who's amazing, mm-hmm. Lindy Hansen, and all of those fantastic folks, but also to be able to have to be able to mine information from the technicians who have worked there for so long, right? Because a lot of the people who whether it was Steve West, the head stage carp, or the folks in the shop, they had so much professional experience and had been there for 30 years and picked up so many tricks of the industry. So to be able to learn from them was invaluable. Also to take what we had learned at school, which was how to do a theater process, one step at a time, but then to take the Grand where you're working on 12 to 13 shows at one given time and you have all of these overlapping processes, that requires a different type of management, a different type of ability to shift between projects. And so to be able to have a safe place to learn that was really monumental, in addition to just really large scale productions that I never even thought I'd be working on so closely out of graduating.
It's interesting you say that, because I think one of the pieces that I have seen over the years that runs true throughout many people's careers is that they have to be willing to take the time to listen to somebody else and take the time to learn from somebody else. Because if they don't, if they come in and they say, oh no, well, I know all of this already. I've learned this already, whether it was at school or whether it was on YouTube or whatever it might be, right? They feel, there are some people who feel like, no, I know it all. But the people who really do seem to make a career, they're the ones who take the time to stand back and say, okay, what can I learn from a Steve who had so many years, like you said, so many years on that stage. And there were things that he just knew about what was going on that stage and where this is, how this works. Nope, that's not going to work on this stage because of this, you know, that kind of a thing. And yes, you can do that because of this, that kind of thing. It's great to have people who you can learn from, but you have to be able to be willing to do that. And you know, if you're not willing to do that, then it doesn't work as well, and you're not going to have the same sort of career.
Absolutely, and I think the people who succeed the most in this industry are the folks who embody lifelong learning as a practice.
Right.
And you know, both theater is changing all the time. Certainly theater technology is changing rapidly. But also, you know, there's, I don't know, I'm saying 1,000 ways to build a flat, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, I learned one thing at school, one way to build a flat, but you have to understand that there's so many other ways. And so to be able to keep picking up the way other people do things across your career, so that, you know, then by the end you have 10 ways to build a flat, and then you can actually apply which one might be the best way for the particular circumstances that you're in. I also love, like, that's my favorite thing about touring or being in a company that has companies tour to it, is that you're constantly learning different ways. Like that, the way they do it in Australia is going to be the different than the way they do it here.
Yeah, that is very cool. It's also cool that some of those 10 ways that you learned how to build a flat are 150 years old.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right? It's not like somebody just came up with that there's somebody had spent the time and it's worked and it's lasted this many years. And, you know, like you say, technology has changed, but other pieces have stayed the same. It's so cool that, you know, in these buildings here, you know, what things are still being used that have been around for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, what can you tell us about this theater? What can you tell us about Canadian Stage? Because you came here a couple years ago, right?
Yes, I was looking at my own LinkedIn profile the other day, and I was like, really? I've been at Canadian Stage for 3 years and 8 months?
Yeah.
Wow, how did that happen? I love working here, and you know, it is a very unique company in Toronto. I think what I love about it the most is that we operate out of 5 venues. So here in, which is our home, this is where our offices are, our rehearsal halls and everything. We have 2 theaters here, the Downstairs Theater, the Marilyn and Charles Bailey Theater, 244-seat Brickbox Theater. And then upstairs, we have the Upstairs Theater, which is about 100 and some odd seats as well. And so, you know, we produce our more intimate, our smaller shows here. We also offer Dream in High Park in the summer, which is, you know, a giant installation, because every year we have to install the infrastructure and install the theater before we actually install the show.
Right.
And it's outdoors, which is obviously, you know, super challenging as well and very different than producing inside. And then we also work at the Bloom Appel Theater at the St. Lawrence Centre for the Arts for our larger shows, as well as the Winter Garden for our holiday panto. And so there's multiple different types of spaces with obviously different collective agreements for in all of them. And then so it's always a giant puzzle to figure out, how do you use like the infrastructure, the resources, specifically the human resources? You know, we have a pretty lean team. How do we use those and shift and adapt them depending on what space we're going to, which is super, super fun and super complex.
So I'm going to stop you there for a second, because I think I'm not sure that everybody necessarily understands. When you say that Canadian Stage has these different venues and you're using different venues, Canadian Stage is not necessarily one theater, right? Where the Grand Theater, as an example, is one building with two stages, but for the most part, that's where all the shows happen. There are some specific things that happen outside, but for the most part, that's where all of the Grand Theater produced shows happen. Whereas what you're talking about is Canadian Stage is really a theater company that does work across the city, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so our own theater is these two spaces here, and High Park, we have a beautiful relationship with the city that allows us to do that. But yeah, we're also spread out across the city, so it's really interesting place to work for that reason.
It's great because you're able to take your brand of art and have it in these different types of venues, but it's still got the Canadian Stage sort of branding and ethos throughout, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's okay. Hey, Daniel, can you tell me a little bit about Canadian Stage and the history behind these buildings?
Well, so Canadian Stage is the merger of Toronto Free Theatre and Toronto Centre Stage, which happened in the late 80s. But I think what I love about its home here is that it used to be an old gas factory that's been converted into a theater. And so when you look around, it's actually an interesting thing because part of the challenge of working here, I would say, is that our architecture puts everyone in separate buildings.
Right. Yes.
So there's not that natural, like someone's walking down the hallway and you get those casual collisions. But that's a product of, this being an older building that's been converted from something else.
Yeah, that's very cool.
But it definitely has that, like the beautiful brick from being built in the late 1800s.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's cool that each theater has its own personality, right? And theaters across the country, they have personalities that are a little bit different. So that leads to another question. You spent time in Toronto doing theater. You spent time in Montreal. You spent time in London. You came back to Toronto to Canadian Stage. Was it what you expected? When you were moving into this role, you had spent, 4-6 years now in London, coming back into the GTA. Was it what you expected coming to a role at this place?
So before I was director of production here, I started as the technical director.
Right.
And which was a direct kind of lateral move from being at the Grand. And I have to say, it was definitely not what I was expecting.
Okay.
Because for a theater that is this large, it's actually, the team is quite lean. So we're at the Grand, being that regional theater with lots of people who have worked there forever, because we rent a lot of our venues, we rent the Winter Garden, we rent the Bluma, we don't have the same, and we don't have our own shop. So we have a prop shop where we can build some of our smaller things, but whenever we build larger sets, we're outsourcing those to some of the production scene shops that are in Toronto. Like we love to work with Wood Studios or Production Canada when it was still around. And so just even that shift from having an in-house shop and having that those carpenters kind of on site and on call to collaborating with an outside organization is a completely different working model than I'd learned kind of working in a different place. The other thing here is that, I'm not this type of technical director, but if you're a TD who loves to be hands-on and loves to build a little bit, you can have that opportunity here because we do have a small little shop where you can build things, where at the Grand, those shops are also unionized, so it's all communication through drawings, all communication to get things built. So it was a real shift in the style of technical direction for me. The other thing is kind of being able to shift depending on what space, right? Our Bailey Theatre, that's one head technician and a house technician that kind of run that space and they're managing all the departments, as opposed to the Bluma Pal is maybe more close to how the Grand operates, where there's a head of department for every department.
Right.
And so shifting between kind of these different ways that the theaters operate, it was also kind of a unexpected challenge to kind of work through as a TD coming into the space.
I think that you're highlighting the fact that the theater industry, every space is unique.
Absolutely.
Like each place that you go to work with, or go to work at, it's not going to be exactly the same. So whether you are here or the Grand or Stratford or Shaw or Banff or Blythe or out in PEI or wherever you might be, each of those spaces it's going to have a certain amount of a unique, kind of a unique way of doing things that is somewhat dictated by the artistic director, or by the production director, or by the director of production, or the TD. But it's also going to be somewhat built on what the venue is, and of course the patrons. It is interesting how that does work across Canadian theatre, and I think it's pretty awesome.
I think it's great. And it's actually one of the things I love about touring as a manager as well is that, you have a show and the way that show loads in. But at the end of the day, you're also kind of adapting to every space you go to. And as soon as you land, you have to read the room, read the people there, how they best receive information, how they do things, and then adapt your load-in plan to the information you're receiving live. So it's one of the things I love about touring is that even on a single show, it's not the same place to place.
Right. It's not that the show opens and you can kind of take the same sort of breath for a few days and say, okay, we're good, we're gonna wait for the next show, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or start building the next show. Okay, cool. What do you think is the most interesting about this industry? What are the things that, you sit back and go, boy, I really, these things are kind of cool about this industry? That's a very broad question, I know that.
Yeah, I think there's so much. I think on the production side, something that I think is super interesting is that just like no 2 days are the same, right? A designer will come in with an idea that's completely out of left field, and we are the ones who get to actualize or realize that. And so, it can be like the example earlier, how do these 26-foot tall icicles fly in,
Right.
Or I need a 11-foot diameter sun that's a rear projection surface, but it also looks like obsidian black when it's not being projected on with a ring of light around it. I've never done that before,
right.
but we have the skills and the tools to be able to do that research and development to be able to get there. And so I think that's something really cool about working in technical theater. And then the other thing is always this push and pull between like the fiscal realities of any organization or the budget of any production and the artistic process, and and how those inform each other. I just think is so interesting. Like, if you work corporate, there's the obviously budget's still a thing.
Yep.
And you might have to make cuts based on what the budget is. But I don't think it has the same level of like artistic curiosity that around it like this does. Like, someone will come and be like, okay, we can't make it rain on stage for the whole time on the whole stage.
Right.
But how do we get to something that is similar to that idea?
Right.
Because we don't have the funds to do that. And that push and pull, that dance of creativity, I think is just so fascinating in this industry.
That's really interesting. So I've been talking a lot with a lot of different people about the state of the industry with new people coming into the industry. And you and I have talked about a little bit, and I've talked to a number of different people around about, where's the next generation coming? Where are they coming? Do we have the schooling and that kind of thing? Is the infrastructure there that was there a number of years ago? Because things are changing. There's no doubt about it. If you were talking to somebody who is thinking about getting into the industry, what would you say to them? What do you think are kind of the most important things that somebody who's considering going into the industry, or maybe trying to convince their parents that this is a good industry for them to be in? What would you say? Like, what kind of stands out to you that you would say, these are some of the reasons why you should be thinking about this?
First, if this is vocation for you, and you are dedicated and you love making theater, there is a place in this industry for you.
Right.
I think a lot of the people who work in this industry are incredibly passionate. They're incredibly generous and willing to offer their time to young people who are entering. And that kind of collective care of people who are entering the industry is really, really special. I'll also say that it can be a challenging industry to start out in and to make a living in. And so, I think it's also to have the expectation that when you're first graduating, that you might have to have a side job
Right.
in order to facilitate as you're still kind of building your network out of people and you're building out your contacts. But that being said, there's also a ton of work in this industry as well. I think committing to being a lifelong learner is super important. Having rigor in the work that you do is really important. I think continued curiosity in terms of both the craft as well as just what is out there and who is out there is really important. And I think to not expect that you're going to have all the answers as soon as you graduate, right? And that is what, building out your network and developing, meeting mentors is for.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Don't burn your bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
This industry is way, way too small to burn any bridges and go stomping off of a show and, upset. Yeah, it's way too small for that, isn't it?
Totally. It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
And that's like, I recommend to young people to see as much theater as you can. It helps you learn what your aesthetic could or may be because you have more reference points for what's out there. You also learn whose work you like, and then you can reach out to them to be a mentor.
Right. What do you think is kind of the biggest area of growth within the industry right now? What area do you think, this is going to change over the next couple of years? We're going to see these things change, or maybe where are the biggest holes in the...
Yeah, it's an interesting prompt because when I think about what is the largest area of growth, I immediately go to, I think we're not in a period of growth right now. And I think the industry is in a period of contraction and trying to figure out what is the new context based on the current economic realities of both arts in Canada, but also, we're in or heading toward a recession, and so that changes people's spending habits, which changes the amount that people are coming out to see theater, and so institutions need time to adapt to that. In terms of where do I see, if I can reframe that question to maybe where I see a lot of opportunity for younger folks entering the industry, I think there is a dearth of PMs and TDs, production managers and technical directors, for sure. There's a lack of stage managers.
Right.
I think really amazing technicians as well. I'm concerned that a lot of the artistry, like with the people who have because when I think of a beautiful fly operator who can, make that piece move with the in time with the music, and the way that piece flies is perfectly in sync. Like that, I think is it's a dying craft, you know? And so I think having people who enter that segment of the industry who have such an appreciation for what we do, I think that's an opportunity to enter. That requires a lot of people as well.
I love that you mentioned the flies, and you're applying an artistic piece to that, because we can talk about sound design as being artistic, and the person who's running sound applies their art to how that microphone is mixed or EQ'd, right? And of course we can talk about lighting and the artistic side, and wardrobe and set design and all of these different pieces. But in the flies, we think of somebody standing on stage going like this really fast, right? And just hopefully it hits its mark on time. But it's very cool that you're saying that has an artistic piece to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's so artistic. And too, even when you think about moving a truck unit across the stage, right? You can move that, hit your mark, put it down and go. Or is there some sort of acceleration and deceleration that kind of matches the other things that are happening on stage, right? And so there is a lot of beauty in those roles as well, in terms of there's a lot of artistry in them.
Yeah. Okay. So, boy, we could go off on a long tangent here, because you mentioned about watching other shows and seeing what do you like about what's happening, and I think you nailed it, because for me personally, Cirque is one of those companies where you can stand back. I mean, I have said many times, I love to see Cirque shows, and I always come out feeling a little bit less about myself because I always feel, do I hit that level of excellence in anything that I do, right? Because of that kind of thing, right? Of everybody who is on stage is an artist of some sort, whether they're pushing a prop on stage or whatever they're doing. And I think you're absolutely right that as younger people, older people, whoever it is, that they're coming into the industry, whether it is in professional theater, or whether that's getting involved in community theater, or whether that's getting involved in applying theatrical arts to their school or to their church, whatever it might be, that looking at how do I do this so that it is using the technical side, which is often who we're talking to in our business, how do I apply that technology in a way that is enhancing the experience? That's very cool.
Exactly. How do we center the art and put that in the middle of all of our different skill sets that we bring to the table?
Right, right. And I think that today it's so easy to rely on a technology and say, we're going to use that automatic thing in the mixer to do this, or we're going to use that automated fly system, or we're going to do the whatever. And does it feel like it's art in the same sort of way?
Totally. And
not to say you can't use that and be artistic. It's just, how do those things fit together?
Absolutely. And I was consulting on a theater recently, and part of the conversation was, okay, do we go to all automated line sets?
Right.
And I said, no, you're going to remove all the artistry of the flies, right?
Right.
And because I think it's imperceptible probably to the average audience person.
Right.
But I've done auto flies before, and they're functional. They are reliable. They're the exact same the entire time. You always press the go. They come in the same amount of time. But to actually program that in a way that is emotional, based, because I think the movement can feel emotional depending on how it's completed with everything else that's happening on stage. That the automation can't deliver.
Right. It's very interesting. Boy, we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, Daniel, you mentioned earlier on about how one of the things that's unique about here is that you don't have your own shop for building scenes, scenic pieces and that sort of thing. So you're working with other companies. And that's one of the things that we're seeing so often today is companies are working together. Theater companies have to work together to be able to do shows. I don't know, from your perspective, from your seat in the Canadian theater world, how do you see this evolving? How this working together, that kind of thing?
I have different varying feelings on it, because I think the positive is that there is more collaboration between theater companies across different regions.
Right.
And so, maybe theaters in Toronto are collaborating with theaters in Hamilton, in Vancouver, in Edmonton. And when you get that collaboration, all of a sudden something that you feel like you might be dealing with alone in isolation, you realize that you have other people across the country who are also facing similar problems to you. And so your network expands in terms of people you can rely on as people to collaborate with. I think some of the challenges are, of course, the more co-productions are, the less work there is, right? And so, if 4 different companies are, in a previous year, would be producing 4 shows, that's 4 whole creative teams, 4 whole stage management teams, this, that, and the other. But now, as it's a co-production, maybe touring across the country, now that's a really great year for 1 designer and stage management team and 3 other sets of teams that no longer have work. Right. And so what does that do to our freelance artists who now have less work, and how do we ensure that there's still enough work to make sure that those people stay in the industry, especially given the attrition we saw over the pandemic?
It's interesting because throughout this conversation so far, we've talked about how we need more people, but we're also talking about how we don't have as many jobs in some situations. And we've also talked about how it's great to work together, but it's also good to be able to do your own shows. It is a complicated industry. It's more complicated, and I'm not saying you're wrong, because I think you're right. I think there's some great things, as you mentioned, about the touring side of things and learning what that's like and experiencing that and bringing it back to your space, right? And it's also a great thing about what it's like to be in this industry. And it's an important piece where people do want to be able to tour and experience different cities and experience different theaters and experience different crews, and that how do I fit this round thing into the square hole, all of that kind of stuff. That's great. And I think that's part of what makes it really interesting, is that on some sides we need more people, and on some sides we're doing theater with less people. In general, it would be better if everything was elevated, right? And this is the reality of where we are in 2026, is that we're a little less on everything. And it would be great if everything was elevated and we were able to produce the shows in-house, but also have theaters come through. Like it's kind of, and shows come through. It'd be great if everything was a little elevated in general.
Well, totally. And I think I love this industry exactly because it is iterative too, right? And I think about, right now, I feel like from an audience perspective, expectations are so high, right?
Right.
Because what does it take for me to get out of the house, out of my pajamas? I'm watching Netflix. I got the entertainment right here.
Yeah.
I expect maybe something of a really flashy show, right? In order to pull me out. So the expectations are that we need high production value, high this. But at the same time, we are in a moment of contraction and less resources as an industry. And so I think a lot of folks are scaling back in terms of the shows that they're putting on the stage. And so how do you still ensure that you have that production value that's gonna pull people out of the house while working with inside the fiscal realities of the theater in the moment, right? And that's kind of why I love the beauty of my job, right? It's like applying numbers and budgets to artistic process.
And it's cool because, as you said earlier on with the rain, right? You mentioned, well, is it going to rain for the entire second act, or can we do something that can make it work? And yeah, that's a cool puzzle, right? Is trying to make that work, because you are competing with Netflix, and you are competing with somebody's screen, and you are competing with the baseball game, and all these different things. So trying to make that work. Again, it's 2026. We need to be thinking about this kind of thing.
Totally, and even to think about as our attention spans get smaller and smaller as we scroll more and more, right? And so our ability to pay attention is going away. And so does the theater we create need to respond to that? Right? Scenographically. Maybe people can't actually sit through a 3-hour show that only takes place in one room. Or maybe there's only a small subsect of the population who can still do that, right?
Right.
Or if you're thinking about creating theater for young people, right? And you think about how, I don't know, I may be out of reference, Blue's Clues, right? Yep. I think it's still cool.
Oh yeah, sure.
Blue's Clues, it switches so often. So does our theater have to mimic that, right?
Right.
Or is theater a place where we go to escape that, to be able to practice focus, right?
Right. Interesting. Well, and it's interesting that Canadian stage has a history of going out and doing some things that are a little bit different, that people can turn into traditions and it's a bit more accessible, like Hyde Park, and like the pantos that you're doing at Christmas and that kind of thing, and those holiday shows that can become traditions, and that people can hopefully build that within their families to say, yeah, we're going to sit through this show, and you're going to take it in, and hopefully by the end, as a young person or as a whoever, that you realize there is something special about this.
Yeah, and hopefully you inspire the love of theater in them and the love of connection. Right. Because I think that's something that Netflix is never going to be able to recreate. Right, it's that person-to-person connection. And if you can instill that as a positive experience in a child, wow, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, coming back to the personal side for a second.
Yeah.
When you say to somebody, you meet your neighbor, or maybe you're meeting some people that you went to school with or something like that, in Toronto, not in Montreal.
Yeah.
And you say, yeah, this is my job at Canadian Stage. What do they think is your actual job? Do you think they actually get it?
No, nobody ever gets what I do.
No.
They're like, you're a project manager. I'm like, yes, I am, but also
Facilities, right? So you make sure the toilets are
yeah,
that's right.
Also the facilities, yeah. But I love it because every time my mother comes in and sees a show, she walks by the soundboard and she looks at that and she goes, wow, who knew theater was so technical?
Wow, that's fun.
And that's what I love. But to think about that, it is amazing to me that someone wearing a microphone, that sound goes to a belt pack that they're wearing. It goes backstage to someone monitoring all the microphones on the radio frequencies. That then goes to the soundboard. Someone live mix that, and then it goes out to the house for everyone to hear all in real time.
Right.
Like that is amazing and such a technical feat when you actually dive into the meat and potatoes of it.
Sure.
And so I think that's what I love about what I do is how technical it is. But also like the way that I think what I love about my job too, right? It's the balance of the business, the fiscal realities, how to facilitate individual artistic process, but all through funds to really create something that's magical and a spectacle on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that's hard to explain to people and say, this is my job.
Totally, right?
Yeah, I'm playing with art, and I have to make sure that the fiscal side fits together.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, the designer wants 150 lights, but they can only focus 120, so I guess we got to do 120, But that doesn't, people don't think about that. Like, even I love explaining to people who aren't in the industry about that someone actually decides where each light is pointed and at what intensity at every moment in the play, it blows people's mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't just randomly turn them on?
Yeah.
It looks good. It's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate what you have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to chat and just what is our industry? Because you can keep this in, maybe, we'll see. But I am a little afraid for our industry right now. I think our industry is a little bit in crisis. The models by which we expect people to come see the work that we do is changing, and we haven't quite caught up to that yet.
Right. I think that's true. I think that we're seeing some artistic directors and some executive directors and boards that are doing some introspective look at that. And it's encouraging to see people within the industry be concerned, and to the number of people within the industry who are stepping up and saying, I really think we need to be considering what's going on with the schools. I really think we need to be considering what's going on with high school students, and are they seeing shows that they need to see so that they can be inspired, and are they seeing the technical side so that they can be inspired. We are seeing that, which is encouraging. I'm hoping that it goes beyond just people talking about it and just people, trying to do something, that they don't get bogged down and they're able to actually move forward. And hopefully, the reality in Canada is that we need a certain amount of help from the government to be able to do that. And hopefully that we will continue to see that support in the future. I'm hopeful that that'll be the case.
Yeah, I'm hopeful for that too. And as I remind myself, theater is an ancient art form.
Absolutely.
And it has always existed and it will always continue to exist. It's just the form in which it will take is still up for grabs. But, I'm sure there's going to be, my generation, we'll make some changes, and the next generation will come up and make some changes, and we'll figure out what it is all together.
Absolutely, and there's so many things, not just from a technical perspective, but also in the way that the next generation thinks about media and thinks about entertainment and thinks about how they spend their time, that we can stand back and say, well, that doesn't fit with theater, and so we're doomed. Or we can say, that's interesting. How do we work with that as theater evolves? It's lots to think about.
Absolutely.
Cool. Daniel, I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you very much for taking the time today. And I really do think that Canadian Stage and the work that you guys do, especially when you're doing things out into the community, does improve the Canadian theater landscape. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me, Carl. Appreciate it.
Thank you.